There's a jar sitting in almost every spice cabinet in South Asia, and most Western kitchens have never even heard its name. It costs about $2. It looks like nothing. Small, hard, amber-colored seeds, slightly bitter, a little stubborn to cook with. And yet this humble seed has quietly become one of the most talked about natural foods when it comes to blood sugar control. It's called Fenugreek, and if you've never bought it, you're not alone. But once you understand what's actually happening inside that tiny seed, you'll probably wonder why nobody handed you a jar of it years ago. Let's start with the picture, because once you have the picture, everything else makes sense. Imagine your bloodstream as a hallway and sugar as a crowd of people trying to get from one room to another. Insulin is the usher, walking each person out of the hallway and into a seat, a cell, where that sugar actually gets used for energy. When everything works the way it's supposed to, the hallway stays clear. People move through steadily, the usher does his job, and nobody notices anything is happening at all. But when meals come in fast and heavy, white bread, white rice, sugary drinks, 3 helpings before you've even chewed properly, the crowd floods the hallway all at once. The usher can't keep up. People start backing up. Over years, this happens again and again, and the whole system gets tired. The seats stop opening as easily. Doctors call this insulin resistance. You might just call it, my numbers won't come down no matter what I do. This is where Fenugreek does something genuinely interesting. It doesn't act like a medication that forces the door open. It acts more like a doorman who slows the crowd down before it ever floods the hallway in the first place. Here's how. Fenugreek seeds are unusually rich in a type of soluble fiber. When that fiber meets water, either soaking in a glass overnight or simply meeting the fluids in your stomach after you eat, it swells up into a thick, viscous gel. That gel does 2 things. First, it physically slows down how quickly food empties out of your stomach and into your small intestine, which is where sugar actually gets absorbed into your blood. Second, that same gel seems to interfere with how quickly carbohydrate is broken down and absorbed in the gut. The net effect, at least in a fair number of clinical studies, is that a meal eaten alongside Fenugreek tends to produce a slower, gentler rise in blood sugar than the same meal eaten without it. Several smaller trials, mostly in people with type 2 diabetes, have found modest improvements in fasting blood sugar and in HbA1c, the marker that reflects your average blood sugar over about 3 months, when Fenugreek was added consistently over weeks. The seed also contains a compound called 4-hydroxyisoleucine, which some researchers believe may help stimulate insulin release in a glucose-dependent way, meaning it may help more when sugar is actually high rather than causing it to drop unpredictably. That said, the research is still limited. Sample sizes are small, study quality varies, and Fenugreek is not something regulatory bodies have approved as a treatment for diabetes. It's a supporting food, not a substitute for medical care. So what does using it actually look like in practice? The traditional method, still used across South Asia today, is simple. A teaspoon of Fenugreek seeds gets soaked overnight in a glass of water. In the morning, some people drink the water and chew the softened seeds. Others simply eat the seeds alongside breakfast. If the bitterness is too much, and it is genuinely bitter, there's no getting around that. Grinding the seeds into a powder and stirring half a teaspoon into yogurt, dal, or a smoothie is a gentler way in. Some people toast the seeds lightly first, which mellows the bitterness somewhat and adds a nutty, almost maple-like note. Fenugreek also shows up ground into spice blends, especially in curries and pickles, which is a lower dose but still flavorful way to work it into regular cooking. A word of caution here that matters more than anything else in this piece. If you take medication for diabetes, whether that's metformin, sulfonylurea, or insulin, Fenugreek can add to the blood sugar lowering effect of those medications. That's not a reason to avoid it, but it is a reason to be careful. Stacking a fiber-heavy, insulin-sensitizing food on top of a prescription drug without your doctor knowing can, in some people, push blood sugar down further than intended. A low blood sugar episode isn't a small thing. It can cause shakiness, confusion, and in serious cases, it's a genuine medical emergency. So the responsible way to bring fenugreek into your routine is to mention it to your doctor first, especially if you're on medication, and to monitor your blood sugar a little more closely in the first few weeks so your doctor can adjust your dose if needed. This isn't fear-mongering. It's just how you use a genuinely active food responsibly. Fenugreek should also be used cautiously or avoided during pregnancy in medicinal doses, since it can stimulate uterine contractions. Culinary amounts in cooking are generally considered fine, but concentrated doses are not something to experiment with while pregnant without medical guidance. There's also a gut adjustment period worth knowing about. That fiber is strong, and if you go from 0 fenugreek to a heaping tablespoon overnight, you may find yourself dealing with some bloating or digestive upset. Most people who use fenugreek regularly recommend starting with a smaller amount, even a 1/4 teaspoon, and building up over a week or two as your gut adjusts. Drinking plenty of water alongside it matters too, since fiber without enough fluid can make things uncomfortable rather than helpful. What makes fenugreek particularly interesting compared to more expensive superfoods marketed for blood sugar is just how unglamorous it is. There's no elaborate marketing behind it, no wellness influencer selling a $60 bottle of extract. It's sitting in the international aisle of almost any grocery store in a plain plastic bag for less than the cost of a coffee. That's part of why it gets overlooked. It doesn't look like a solution because it doesn't come with a shiny label promising one. It's also worth being honest about what fenugreek is not. It is not a cure for diabetes. It will not replace insulin for someone who needs it, and it will not undo years of insulin resistance on its own. The research behind it is promising but modest. Think of it as one useful tool among several, not a miracle in a spice jar. The foods and habits that tend to matter most for blood sugar are still the basics. The overall pattern of what you eat, how much you move during the day, how well you sleep, and how consistently you take any medication your doctor has prescribed. Fenugreek works best as a small, steady addition inside that bigger picture, not as a replacement for it. If you're curious to try it, here's a simple, low-risk way to start. Buy a small jar of whole fenugreek seeds, not the capsule supplements, at least not yet, since food-based amounts are easier to control and adjust. Soak 1 level teaspoon in a glass of water overnight. In the morning, drink the water and eat a few of the softened seeds, ideally alongside breakfast, rather than on an empty stomach if the bitterness bothers you. Give it 2 to 3 weeks before expecting to notice anything, since this isn't a fast-acting food. It works through steady, cumulative effects rather than an immediate spike-blocking action. If you monitor your blood sugar at home, keep an eye on your readings over that window, and if you're on any diabetes medication, let your doctor know what you're trying so they can watch alongside you. There's something almost old-fashioned about the whole idea, using a $2 jar of seeds, patiently, over weeks, instead of reaching straight for a bigger prescription. It won't work the same way for everyone, and it's not a substitute for proper medical care. But for a food that's been quietly used across generations, long before anyone put a scientific name to what it was doing, fenugreek has earned a reasonable amount of modern research behind it, and a place on the counter next to the coffee, waiting to be soaked, for anyone whose doctor gives the go-ahead to try it.